Your betta just built a bubble nest, and every fish forum on the internet is about to tell you the same thing. Congrats, he's happy. And look, that's not totally wrong, but it's about 10% of the actual story, and the other 90% is genuinely wild. Because here's what that little raft of bubbles actually is. It's a window into your fish's hormones, his personality type, his social strategy, and this is the part I want you to stick around for, a behavior so sophisticated that researchers are now using it to help save endangered species in the wild. We're going to get into all of that. I've gone deep on the ethology research, the breeding studies, and the stuff that experienced keepers know that never makes it onto the basic care pages. By the end of this, you're going to look at that bubble nest completely differently. But I want to start with the second most surprising thing first, because it's going to reframe everything else that comes after it. A bubble nest can suggest your betta feels safe and content, but that's not always the case. Some bettas will build nests even in less than ideal conditions. Researchers and experienced keepers have documented sick bettas, stressed bettas, even bettas in dirty pet store cups throwing up full bubble rafts. The nest is not a health meter. It's not a happiness score. What it actually is a reproductive trigger firing. When the internal hormonal conditions say go, he goes, regardless of whether the external conditions are great or terrible. So, if you've been using the nest as your main indicator that your water parameters are good, you need a different metric. The nest tells you about his biology. It doesn't tell you about your husbandry. Now, the flip side of that is just as important. If your betta never builds a bubble nest, that does not mean you're failing him. Many perfectly healthy males simply never build in captivity, and this is well documented. Breeders have even developed a workaround for it. They'll physically scoop up a finished nest from one male's tank and float it in another male's tank to jumpstart a breeding attempt with a less enthusiastic builder. The nest itself is transferable, which tells you something really interesting. The engineering and the parenting instinct can be decoupled. The fish doesn't need to have built the nest to care for what's inside it. Here's where it starts getting really interesting, and this is the thread I want you to keep in mind because I'm coming back to it at the end. There's a specific finding about betta personality types and nest building that almost nobody in the hobby talks about, and it changes how you think about your individual fish entirely. But first, let's talk about what the nest actually is as a structure, because the biology here is genuinely cool. Male bettas create these nests by blowing air bubbles from their mouths, each coated with a sticky mucus-like substance produced in their saliva. This coating helps the bubbles stick together and stay afloat. And in the wild, they're not just blowing them anywhere. Bubble nests are usually attached near the water's surface by floating plants, leaves, or other objects. That's not random. In their natural habitat, shallow, stagnant, acidic blackwater, a floating leaf gives the nest physical protection, visual cover, and an anchor point in calm water. The male is essentially doing site selection before he even starts building. And tannins, the stuff that comes from Indian almond leaves and driftwood, aren't just an aesthetic choice for your tank. They chemically change the water in a way that makes those saliva-coated bubbles stick together better and last longer. So when keepers add botanicals and notice their betta suddenly starts building more consistently, that's not a coincidence. They've recreated a chemical condition that his biology is literally optimized for. Bettas are adapted to thrive in low-oxygen water conditions that would kill most other fish, such as rice paddies, slow-moving streams, drainage ditches, and large puddles. And the nest is a direct response to that environment. During the mating process, nests provide a safe and oxygen-rich haven for fertilized eggs and developing fry. The fry aren't born with a fully functional labyrinth organ yet, so keeping them suspended near the oxygen-rich surface inside the nest dramatically improves their survival compared with the debris-laden bottom. The nest is a tiny life support system, and the male is running it solo. Betta spawning takes an average of 5 hours, during which eggs are released a few at a time by the female and fertilized externally before falling down the water column. The male retrieves approximately 90% of the fallen eggs in his mouth and places them into the bubble nest. And once the female has spawned, he chases her away aggressively, not out of hostility for its own sake, but because she will eat the eggs if she stays close. The same fish who just courted her is now her biggest threat to the clutch. That behavioral switch is fast and it's complete. Strong surface flow, by the way, can completely shut down nesting in some males. When keepers baffle their filters or add floating plants to calm the surface, previously non-nesting males often start building almost immediately. So if your betta has never built a nest and you've been wondering why, surface turbulence is one of the first things worth checking. Now, quick pause here because I want to mention something. This channel is working toward 1,000 subscribers, and I'm doing a $100 Amazon gift card giveaway to celebrate when we hit that milestone. If you want to follow the journey or be in the running for the winner announcement, subscribe and drop a comment below. I'll randomly pick a winner once we hit the number. Now, back to the science, because this next part is the one that genuinely surprised me. Here's the thing most people assume. Bigger nest equals better male. More attractive, more dominant, more likely to win. That's the intuitive logic. But experiments with wild Betta splendens found that females did not consistently prefer males with larger nests, and large nest males didn't win more male-to-male contests either, and it gets more complicated. Another study found that males who performed more intense courtship displays built larger nests, which you'd expect to signal better parental quality. But pairs with those high-display males actually ended up with fewer eggs in the nest. So being flashy isn't always reproductively efficient. The female is running a more nuanced calculation than we assumed. Female mate choice research suggests females weigh body size and color more heavily than nest size. In one study, females preferred larger males, and in another, red males over blue ones when movement was controlled, while nest size was just one of several cues in the mix. And in complex social choice experiments, females sometimes chose the male they'd watched win a fight over the loser, regardless of other traits. So a male's social reputation, who he just beat, can actually override his nest in the female's decision-making. The nest is part of the pitch, not the whole pitch. Now here's that personality finding I flagged earlier. A 2022 hormone study split male bettas into 3 groups: nest builders, intermediate builders, and non-builders. And what they found was not what you'd expect. Nest builders had the lowest cortisol, the stress hormone, and were actually less aggressive. Non-builders were the most aggressive with the highest cortisol levels. And the intermediate builders, the ones who put some energy into nests but weren't obsessive about it, performed best in a learning task. What this tells you is that how much your betta bubble nests is connected to a broader personality profile: his stress response, his aggression style, his cognitive flexibility. These aren't random variations. They're linked traits. Your betta isn't just a fish with a preference. He has a type. And nesting frequency is highly individual even when conditions are identical. Some males are daily nesters who constantly rebuild. Others in the same water, same temperature, same feeding schedule might build a few token nests per year. Age plays into it too. Younger, vigorous males are much more prolific builders, and enthusiasm for nesting typically drops as they get older, even when everything else stays the same. One more thing worth knowing: the assumption that only males build bubble nests is not quite right. Multiple aquarists and observers have documented females building smaller, less frequent nests, likely tied to their own hormonal cycles and reproductive readiness. It's not common, but it happens. And even when there's no female anywhere in sight, a well-fed, secure male may keep a standing nest or rebuild repeatedly. It's his way of staying on reproductive standby for the moment a potential mate wanders past. Now, here's the piece that I think reframes the whole thing. As of 2017, around 73 species are classified within the genus Betta. Roughly 18 species are bubble nesters. The bettas exhibit 2 kinds of spawning behavior. Some build bubble nests, such as Betta splendens, while others are mouth-brooders. The mouth-brooding species are sometimes speculated to have evolved from the nest builders in an adaptation to their fast-moving stream habitats. So bubble nesting isn't even the dominant strategy in the genus. It's the ancestral one. And the fish you have at home is one of the species that kept it. And domesticating Betta splendens has yielded extensive insights into reproductive biology, breeding requirements, and parental care behaviors, while also providing essential guidance for conserving endangered wild betta species. The behaviors your fish is running in your tank, the nest building, the paternal care, the territorial defense, are now being studied to design better conservation habitats for threatened wild bettas in blackwater environments they're rapidly losing. Your betta's bubble nest connects directly to that. And the last thing, the one I want to leave you with. Many owners feel genuinely bad when a water change destroys a nest, but the fish is not emotionally attached to that specific structure. If his hormones say it's breeding time, he will simply build another one. What matters to him is not the nest that existed. It's the drive to build the next one. That's the whole behavior in a sentence. Not preservation, but perpetual readiness. So the next time your betta starts blowing bubbles, you're not just watching a happy fish do a cute thing. You're watching a hormonal system activate, a personality type express itself, a parental instinct that's millions of years old run its program, and a behavior so well studied that it's helping keep other species alive on the other side of the planet. If you want to go deeper on betta behavior, the video on betta aggression and what it actually signals is worth watching next. A lot of what we covered here connects directly to that. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time, especially if you want in on that giveaway. Drop a comment below telling me whether your betta builds nests or never touches them. I'm genuinely curious what the split looks like in this community.